afternoon from the Mississippi to the Big Apple. And good morning back on to the left coast. And this is no time for rational thinking. When the mind is the battlefield, this is no time for rational thinking. So we have Earth Defense Force with a tirade on tyranny. And I have to echo. Okay, so I think we'll work through this and see how this works out as far as when to mute and when to not, because there'll probably be a little delay there. And when you speak, Patrick, that way I think that might take up for this headset on your end. But anyways, I took some notes this morning in UCY chat. And matter of fact, let me pop back over here to Real Liberty Media, where I'm side by side with UCY.TV. Channel 24 from Real Liberty Media. And if you are catching this downstream, reallibertymedia.com for worldtruth.org. And thanks to Grammy Mary for that, and Grimner Angels over at UCY.TV. So we have some listeners over there, and we have some listeners over here. And I guess that puts us all together, if not separately at least. Welcome, Patrick.
How's it going, brother?
Good. Did you make it into the chat room over here at Real Liberty Media?
Yep, getting there now. Yep.
Right on. So you're a listener and chatter over at UCY, and I've heard you call in, and very articulate. You have a lot of information, a lot of things to share. So I figure what I'll do is we'll discuss some topics, and I'll take some notes as you speak on that in case there's any questions. And I'll be watching the chat at UCY and at Real Liberty Media, and if you all listeners have any questions, feel free to add them in, and I'll relay them. So I'll just run through the list that I kind of took a short list this morning, and that's to do with artificial intelligence, nanobots, DARPA, the Psy soldiers, and also the Philadelphia experiment. Bioreplication, talking about transporter technology, and RF frequencies, and its use against targeted individuals. So with that, the mind is the only battlefield after all. And here we are. And we have Patrick, Earth Defense Force.
Yes, sir.
All right. Hey, where do you want to start at? What topic?
Yeah, that's a good place right there. And mind is the battlefield.
Right.
That phrase came out of for people who are listeners outside the United States, like that came out of the U.S. Army, out of North Carolina, out of Fort Bragg, out of the Psychological Warfare Operations, which is headquartered down there. So I guess I could start with that. Years back in my youth, I came close to joining up, myself, and going through all of that. I come from a military family. All of my family members, males or rifles. Service in my family goes back to Civil War. So for me, I was groomed and trained for all of that, and went through the whole process probably up till halfway through college, even got a scholarship, from the armed services to go in and do all of that. I became familiar with them out of work, both with my family and then with myself. They were one of the groups that tried to recruit me when I was, coming up, in the game and all of that. Fort Bragg. To tie into something else, they also were heavily active in a lot of the activities that were going on under the last president, under Bush. I don't know how much people follow in terms of where all that information was coming from, but when Bush started his whole campaign after the Patriot Act in 2001, instead of going to DOD, Department of Defense, instead of going to all the agencies and branches that we have here that specifically deal with that, Bush specifically went to Fort Bragg and asked the Department of Information which is a smaller branch within psychological warfare headquarters down there at Fort Bragg, to give all of the talking points from start to finish. So for 7.5 years, Office of Information under psychological warfare was giving all the talking points that we were seeing on TV. So every time you turned on CNN or you turned on Fox, MSNBC, and you saw some retired whatever, in a suit talking military points, that was basically, in short, a psychological operation. What's funny is that they didn't even hide it for up until, I don't know if it's still online now, but up until 2014, all of these papers were declassified. They were on .gov and .mil sites all over the internet, widely, not just talking points, but internal domestic strategies. They actually had papers titled Domestic Internal Strategy. And this is all psychological operations, how to sell you on the war, how to convince people who are journalists in the game, how to be on board with the war, how to manipulate them and coerce them for manufactured consent, all of these things. And I don't know if you remember back then, they were even targeting people who were elected officials, both on the state and congressional level. They had white papers on how to deal with people in the system who were not compliant. So,
you call that domestic, I'll give you a second here. Domestic internal what? And first, let me get that question answered. The operation was domestic internal something.
The name of the operation specifically, the best way to put it is it wasn't just one. There were several names. There were probably, on my hard drive, I probably have 40 or 50 operations, and then from people that I know in the game at Fort Bragg, that's not even half of what's out there that was run by Bush. An example of a operation, or a program called Operation Talon. I don't know if people are familiar with that. A lot of these operations were managed and directed on the Fort Bragg psychological operations end, and they were carried out by other departments. So, for instance, what Bush did is he set up a Joint Special Operations Command, and it was based by the U.S. Army JSOC, and they did all of the point, the headhunting, for the operation, the talking points, the psychological strategy, and they would distribute that out to both military and civilian. So Operation Talon was one, which dealt with just social media, and that was new. That was a very new thing back then in 2001 and 2002. I think I've only been maybe like a decade, that people were like online. The big thing back then was, this is pre-Facebook. AOL was still famous, all that kind of stuff. But they had a problem back then in terms of, mass grabbing emails. That program was actually the linchpin that stopped the 2004 anti-war march. I don't know if people remember, but there were several marches throughout the 8 years of Bush. The largest one occurred in 2004. This is 2.5, 3 years into the invasion. We're going on invasion 2 now. I'm going to go from Afghanistan to Iraq. We're 3 years in. People mobilized nationally. So for that march, that was historically the largest march since the Vietnam anti-war march. I think we brought in close to 1.5 million people in D.C. First day alone, they rounded up something like 8,000 people based on records of Washington, D.C. police, and that was all based on Operation Talon. That was just snoop and grab. You see that now on TV all the time when you see a protest. You see cops doing the snatch and grab, tactic. That is not just random, where they're just randomly physically going after people. That's signal intelligence based out of PSYOP headquarters. That's one of their original programs, which is target cell phones, you target hard drives, computers, any type of RF signal. You consolidate and aggregate that before they are on the field.
Okay.
Right.
Somebody's here on forward or something. So, anyways, I have a friend, PM Beers in Los Angeles, and she does live streaming. She was a targeted individual, as far as I'm concerned, about when she was snatched up, and another guy, I forget his name, but I'd like to find out the conclusion of that. But anyways, yeah, they. Boy, I'm sorry, I don't have that full information. I got distracted. Somebody drove through it before, but but hey, that's life out here in the hills.
I'm with you there, and I have nothing but sympathy for people under various programs who are targeted. In the beginning, I mean, there's been targeted programs that go, way back. I guess if we're just dealing with, the recent years. It started with electronic signals intelligence, data grabs, things of that sort. I mean, now it's just on a whole completely other level. I mean, now we're doing things that are just, beyond the pale. There are a lot of stories out there of targeted individuals. Some of them chemically, some of them through electronic harassment, which is a huge program, both by DoD. Fort Bragg has their own targeted individual harassment program. CIA has one. CIA runs a program through IARPA, IARPA. They're sort of like the CIA version of DARPA. 1,000 times more evil, but yeah, they have a signals intelligence-based harassment campaign. It's not hands-on at all. You'll never see them. It's just mind mapping and just messing with you, just messing with your head. If you go on YouTube or you look on the internet, I think it was like 2010, 2011. They put this technology from DoD into the public sphere. I think it was first displayed in New York around Christmas time, and they had, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Christmas, it was before that, it was Halloween, 2010. And they had people walking down the streets of New York, and they had these microwave-based speakers that were on top of towers, and apartment buildings, and all of this stuff. So you're walking down Manhattan, Brooklyn Street, there's these huge towers, 50, 60, 70 stories up, and they have these like little microwave antenna things that you put in your home now for TVs. This one company was marketing the fact that they could broadcast signals to your brain. Right, and so they were running commercials on this. It had something to do with Halloween and scaring people, and they would show this video where people were walking down the street, and this voice would appear, and it would say, "Who's there?" People would turn around and look all freaked out. And it was a good Halloween gag, but it was basically a display of that technology. So that's been out there in the civilian market for 5 years. They basically field tested that back in the 90s in Iraq. General McChrystal was a big proponent of that. He was really hardcore on testing all of our new tech that we had on anyone that we could. But if Clinton was against that in 98 and 99, he didn't want to go hardcore, and mess with people's heads and start tuning the DNA with RF signals and virus switches and all of that. But when Bush came in 2001, and within a year he was all in. He was all in, specifically with DARPA and IARPA. And those three agencies, DARPA, IARPA, and Psychological Warfare Headquarters at Fort Bragg, those were his trident agencies that he did 90% of his operations out of, and it just steamrolled people because half of it was a psychological operation. It was mental. From the color coding warnings that were often fake to the propaganda that they were pushing on cable. I don't know if you remember on MTV for about 4 or 5 years until 2006. They were broadcasting these commercials. If you see something, say something.
Yeah,
and all these commercials had economic class systems embedded into it, racial profiling, all of these other things. And that was the start of it in terms of pushing the propaganda, and creating the whole meme, for that.
Yeah,
very
multifaceted. Listen, I am here in chat, but not typing, Gerner, and over UCY.TV. Hey, would you copy the Real Liberty Media link and drop it over there in chat? They're asking for a link. A couple of people are, and because I'm not typing this because of this hardware. Yeah, folks, and while on Skype, if I hit the keyboard, it will crash my computer. So,
well,
looks like somebody did make it over.
Wait a minute. Yeah. How's that?
I posted it. I dropped that link in the Skype. If you can copy and paste that over to UCY.TV, Patrick. So, listen, on this deal, typically you see it in movies, the so-called schizophrenic. Hey, there's Hannibal.
Yeah, she heard a neighbor.
But anyway, so these people walking around talking to themselves apparently, and I venture to say that perhaps some of those people are the result of the experiments perhaps performed upon them. A friend of mine passed away here this year, and he had a few voices that coincidentally broadcast to him. Some people thought he was crazy, but he was a son. His dad was, and at the end of his life, he actually came into a lot of money, and he still lived like a hermit anyway, so without electricity or anything. He's a pretty good guy. He's a real good friend of mine. Reminds me of Flash, actually, if you look at him. Yeah, really, though. But anyway, so his dad was an opera star, and had a lot of money, and involved in what would people would say the industry or whatever. There's links at least that Illuminati or whatever name you want to put on it are involved in this, also in this psychological warfare. But anyway, so he'd have these voices, and hey, who's to say that he had been chipped or something, and they weren't actually sending stuff to his brain? To some people that sounds crazy, but I didn't think the guy was crazy. I think that possibility really existed, and just one of the aspects. We're all being psychologically broadcasted to when you watch television, to the flicker rate and so on. So there's many aspects to the battlefield of our mind that is being assaulted. So I'll turn it back to you now, Patrick, and let you go from where you're at.
What's interesting about that? You were talking about broadcasting through TV. That was I don't remember. I don't have that paperwork in front of me. I believe it was like 58 or 59. We had mastered that at CIA. They had. Okay, so to give a little bit of background in terms of my history, and I was explaining that in the beginning. My family being all military, my father was military intelligence for about 40 years, and he worked from Korea all the way up to Grenada, Panama, under Reagan, out of DOD and all that. But back in like late 50s, they had mastered that because when he was in Vietnam in '67, they were openly using triangulation in terms of signals intelligence, and they had that mastered down to an art. The basic triangle shaped antennas that you see now. We have high-powered antennas, high-powered triangle antennas. Those were state of the art back then. In the mid '60s, those were state of the art, and we had that stuff nailed down. You know what I mean? And that was using radio frequencies. So some people now, they look at radio frequencies, and I don't know how familiar you are with this, but that's been the latest program that DARPA and IARPA out of the CIA love. So people ask me, and they say, well, how did the government, tap into your TV? How do they tap into your computer? And the way they do that is that they're using old technology from Vietnam. They're using... What they do is every time they build technology in the United States, it has to go through all of this legislation and blah, blah, blah. Those tech specs and those tech reports have to be sent basically to government agencies before it's approved by the FCC, blah, blah, blah. So for years, for decades, my family have made it very clear that the military gets all of this hardware years before it's publicly released, before it's even talked about actually being released to the public. So before smart TVs even came on the scene in 2010, the military was testing those out in the early 80s. Special operations forces were using smart TVs back in the 80s, and that's just the way it works. And back then, they were using RF signals, radio frequency signals, low band RF signals, which basically transmit from your TV and your computer. This is standard now. Everybody who's on their computer right now has an RF signal coming out of their computer. Even when you unplug your computer and you turn it off, it is still broadcasting a very low frequency RF signal. And it goes out to about a mile to mile.
Interrupt this program.
An emergency.
From the Buzz Fever. And we said it twice. Hey, it is 4:20 somewhere. And this is a message to remind you that cannabis can.
Yes, it can. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. There you go.
Fired about.
Can.
Blackbird, this is Vince right here speaking. I am Vince Easley. I never introduced myself. I'm Vince Easley. Find me at worldtruth.org. Vince Easley on Facebook at Vincent Easley II. That's a Roman numeral 2 or Gap II. And again, welcome to everybody listening. And really glad to be along here at World Truth, Real Liberty Media. Side by side over here, of course, with UCY.TV, where I'm an at-large host, producer, and publicist. And I've been a fan of World Truth and Real Liberty Media for a while, and Hal Anthony Lessons from Behind the Woodshed originate here and simulcast over to UCY.TV Sunday afternoons. So, yeah, really a great place over here. The alternative to Facebook. So, with the links I've included an inviter to World Truth. And if you're listening now and you are not a part of World Truth, I'd like to invite you over. Thanks, Grammy, and thanks, Sherman, and thanks, Jules. So, we're at RF frequencies and smart TVs. Oh, and Grammy Mary says hi to you, by the way, Patrick. She owns World Truth and is providing this right now. Yeah.
Hey there, Grammy. Hey there, Grammy Mary. How you doing?
All righty. And round 2.
Yeah. So those signals, those RF signals are constantly coming out. TV, computer. They have about 1.5 to 2 mile range. So, I mean, if you think about like where I am, I'm in a city, and my city is probably like 7 miles east to west, 5 miles north to south. It's pretty small. But with signals like that, do you know what I mean? I mean, they could be literally in the middle of the city and pick up with one machine. They could probably pick up 300,000, 400,000 nodes. Which is that's the program that they run now. Most of their data collection is not just fusion centers; it's also aerial. So when you guys are out there in wherever, in deep country, you see these like little small, 2-engine prop planes buzzing your little small town, and you're like, WTF? What's going on? That's probably what's going on. Because that's the program that they run. They run small aerials to not bring attention. And it's pretty much a 24/7 program.
Well, let me ask you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I feel like we ought to really be singing like, "What's going on?" No, really.
No, you don't want to sing it.
What about these trails that we see in the sky? Can you infer anything into that with any of these RF programs? I mean, we're looking at these heavy metals and we're absorbing them in our body, and of course, that makes for a lot of vibration when you start dinging. Hey, Captain Greenway, you made it to Real Liberty Media, and Maddie did too. Look at there. Thanks, guys. When you're looking at frequencies that's affecting the body, aluminum, barium, strontium. I'm sure the list could probably be added to pretty high. So, do you find anything that has a correlation to that?
Yeah, you did good there. Aluminum, strontium, barium. Those are the main ones. There's 20 or 30 other ones. I mean, just based on the nature of what they are, it's all toxic poison, basically, for both the earth and for our biology. As to why they're doing it, I mean, at this point, for me, the proof is clear. If anyone's on the internet and, you want to look things up, you can look up climate engineering. Don't type in geoengineering, because the way the databases are set up at Google, they're going to take you to all the fringe BS stuff. If you type in climate engineering, it's an actual hardcore science, if you want, quote unquote, they've been teaching for about 15 years now. You get a degree in it. The only people that are hiring are the U.S. government, and specifically the U.S. Air Force. The U.S. Air Force has 4 different locations. It's called the Department of Weather. Department of Weather, U.S. Air Force. And this is how they operate and triangulate their program. They have many sky-based programs. The spraying is just one of them. Started in the early 70s, kicked into high gear in the late 80s, early 90s. It's a global program. So every JSOC, Special Operations Command, for your respective country is the one who's going to be running that program. The global sole controller for that would be NATO Special Operations Command. If people want to look into that, they can look into that. There's not going to be much online, of course, because it's within NATO. But they're the ones that originated that program. The science behind that was that they were specifically dealing with and trying to treat what's called post-glacial rebound. And that's a scientific term that deals with ice at the polar caps that melts, that creates a bulge on the Earth. Whether, if you think of an ice cube, or if you think of how you sit on your mattress on a Tempur-Pedic, put all this weight down, and then when you sit up, right, it's going to rise up, create a bulge on the Earth. Basically, that's what's been going on for 20, 30 years now. I mean, these guys have no clue on how to stop this stuff. They know that it's happening. People debate on the sideshow as to whether it's man-made or it's not. But at the same time, they've known clearly I think the first paper that I saw came out in 78, where they knew definitively for a fact that by 95 to 2000 that they were going to lose half of the ice, both caps. And they knew that it was going to have a cascading effect globally. They knew this. So it was 20 years of, how do we approach it? Who funds it? What do we do? Yada yada yada. So
I'd like to interject into this. I think there's a lot of data, and a person can make any type of determination, and obviously it can be, because I do, to any direction of so-called global warming, change, whatever handle you want to hang on it, screw it in there, and there you go. But for me, from perspective, if you look at all the roughness of the world, and difference in terrain, respectively, it still would be smooth, apparently. So the small amount of ice, one way or another, I just don't see how that would have any effect on squishing down on the Earth and making it bulge out any. It's minute amount compared to the mass. I just don't think it would affect it.
I mean, personally, I tend to agree with you, and then from the reports that I was looking at, 76 to the 90s, they were really stuck on this theory. This theory is out there. If people just want to go to the internet, however they want to do it, and they type in post-glacial rebound, the science is there. Now, part of the effects of that we've seen in the last 5 years. And there's another part that they knew that was coming, which are the earthquakes, the sinkholes, which are global. And some people say, that has to do with fracking, and that it has nothing to do with fracking. It has to do with the bulging of the Earth. Part of what they were trying to figure out was whether this was going to cause the flooding itself. And there was going to be a rise in the ocean from that. How is this going to cascade down into volcanoes and supervolcanoes? Because you're going to have a crusting and a shifting on the plates underneath, the oceanic plates. So they got all into that, and they had all of these different theories. It's going to create, subterranean oceanic earthquakes, which may destabilize this region, Southeast Asia, this and that. And they calculated all of their figures. Nobody thought it was going to be Nobody thought it was going to be an extinction level event. They thought, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, would be displaced over time, over decades. So we can fix some of this stuff, and then some of it is overkill. I think the spraying is overkill. And I think that has nothing to do with what people would like to think of as human-caused, man-made global warming. I think what they're putting out with Al Gore and all these people. I think that's BS. I mean, from the military reports that I've read, they knew that the Earth, as a spring ball, was transitioning through different parts of our solar system, and that we were crossing the galactic plane. The galactic belt, the galactic ecliptic. They knew that back in the 60s and the 70s. 50s and the 60s, they started launching probes to Mars, and they were really big on Mars. All the probes came back in the 60s. They had all of this data on Mars. They had all of this data on the Moon. They knew this stuff. They knew back then in their space-based reports out of NASA what was going on with the Earth and how we were transitioning through the galactic equator, through the galactic ecliptic. And they knew that it was not going to be so much industrial waste or this or that. And so what I mean by that is it's not just the Earth heating up. We have the Earth and every single planet, moon, that you can think of in our solar system that's heating up. We have new solar storms that have been developing on Uranus and Jupiter for like the last 8 to 9 years. Which is
You've been looking at my butt.
So we have that going on. So you've got all types of crazy stuff.
And just a ball, and I'll lance it down in. It ain't that bad. Except for I got pride.
No. So, but that knowledge, that stuff is
like Uranus.
I know. I set myself up for that one. I know.
Look, I'm like a dog and a squirrel. I can't resist that. I'm barking trees, baby.
No, I know. I made it too easy. I know.
I've got a question for you about.
Sure.
I'm not sure if it's related to what you've been talking about so far, but if you have a military background, you may be able to answer this from experience, if not opinion. All right. And do you believe that there's any chance there will be a revolution in the United States?
That question is
opinion or fact, whichever one you go with.
It's just difficult to answer. I mean, I already have an answer for that.
Well, that's why I'm asking. What do you think?
There is, I would say, I think I know what you mean by the question, and I think you mean regular people like you and I. And to that end, I would lean towards no. And I know there's a lot of people that want that, and they want the quickening and the reformation, and they want the cleansing to go on. I dig all that. I'm with everybody on those points. The reason I lean towards no on that, there's a thing going on in the military now, which everybody in the military knows about, but nobody's really talking about. There's kind of been a quiet, secret war, civil war going on amongst our intelligence agencies. So on that end, there is a civil war already going on, in my opinion. And people that we expect to be patriots are being patriots. And because of the level of what they do and where they're at, you'll probably never hear about it. But yeah, there are people. I'll give you an example on that. Let's go back about 3-4 years and let's look at Virginia. Let's look at the earthquake in Virginia. If you look at science in terms of earthquakes, all earthquakes come with aftershocks. At least one. Most come with at least 10 to 15 aftershocks, whether they be small, whatever. If you look at that earthquake, the so-called earthquake in Virginia, it had no aftershocks. It had none. From people from New York to Florida, every single college reported no aftershocks whatsoever in the history of man. The first earthquake ever recorded with 0 aftershocks.
Yeah, right.
So the word that I heard on that was that it was not an earthquake at all. That it was a dump. It was a deep underground military base in this Civil War that was detonated with a low-yield nuke in this Civil War that was going on. And I keep hearing it. Let's also think about something else. Obama in 2010, I think it was, when he was in Mexico. If you Google Mexico, Obama, Mexico earthquake, His daughter almost died in an earthquake on the same day that the Mexican Special Forces were running a drill on earthquakes. And we all know the BS. Right, we all know the BS with drills and how they go live, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is in the first couple of years when people in D.C. were openly rumoring and talking about assassinating Obama. They were openly talking about that. You know, I mean, if you think about the vitriol on TV, I mean, you can even run to David Duke and into what Trump's saying now. That was nothing in comparison to what was behind the scenes. You had high-level generals who were talking about treason. You know, they were talking about commander-in-chief is committing treason, and there were people who were literally believing that with all of their heart. You know, and they had power. These weren't just like one amongst who were just first and second lieutenants. These were like first, you know, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star generals, you know, in DOD all around the Beltway here who were talking like that. It reminded me of the times of JFK, even though that was before my time. You know, when I heard those stories from my father, it reminded me a lot of that. And then my father, who's retired now, he was really scared of that. You know, when he heard this talk, and my military buddies heard this talk, you know, they were like, this is not a joke. We have high-level people who are staff general commanders of special forces units, you know, who are black ops, who are talking about how their president, you know, is committing treason. You know, that's JFK talk, you know. And then Mexico happens. And then the prostitute thing happens. That was not just willy-nilly stuff, you know. That was, you know, I mean, people can think what they want. From what I hear in D.C., that was not willy-nilly stuff. You know, that was him. They were trying to set him up. Those prostitutes were a setup. Earthquake was a, you know, the earthquake was a hit, you know. So if you look at Virginia, to this day, I still can't find any science on any aftershock whatsoever. And I live here in Washington, D.C., so I've gone to George Washington, I've gone to Georgetown University, I've gone to Johns Hopkins, I've gone to Virginia Tech. I mean, you name it. I've gone to Duke University, I've gone to the best of them, I've gone to USGS, you know, service here. And nobody has any aftershock reports, any science of anything.
Like before chat gets away from me too far, and it did already, Beth was saying about some of the events over in Europe, and then, of course, that affecting public opinion about borders. Let's see. And, for you, Flash, from Grimner. Catch the meteor! Just for you, big boy.
Oh, I'm so lucky. But I'll go out spectacularly, as I always do.
And Beth also says she believes there's an internal struggle going on. She says, even I have heard rumblings out here in Booneyville. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Can I go back and speak to that real quick?
You bet.
So, to give a short history on that, back in the 40s, the House of Saud did a deal with Prescott Bush and the Bush family. I'm not going to go through the whole history, but let's just run it up to the present day. House of Saud, Israel, and the Bush family. Herbert Walker started the drug war. When he started the drug war, he basically went around to the war colleges. You have an Army War College, Air Force, Navy, what have you. And he had this slick thing where him and Cheney and Rumsfeld, they started a pact where they started recruiting within the naval colleges, and they were thinking years out. So we're going to recruit these guys now. You know, when they're in war college, training to be generals. You know, we'll have them mind locked years down the road. We'll have alliances. They'll be loyal to us the whole 9 yards. So basically, the plan worked. And so he was only CIA director for like a year and a half, 2 years. But they kept running this routine. Where every time there was a graduation, there was a new class, whether it was Army War College, you name it. They would go there. They would handshake. They'd give out money, and here's a little prize. Good for you. They didn't know these people. They were just building alliances. So the drug war is in full operation. This is now late 70s. My father was in one of these operations. There were many COINTEL operations, and this one had to do with the destabilization of the African American community by infiltrating it with basically drugs, blah, blah, blah. There were psychological operations, but we know that the drug running operations go back to Vietnam. We started importing those drugs after Vietnam. We kept those routes open through Air Asia. Air Asia came before Air America. Everybody knows Air America now. That's famous. That was CIA stuff. Never ended. Just kept continuing. Continued all the way up to the present day of the 80s, and we get to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, from day one, was was a real redneck nobody. And I don't mean redneck in a bad sense. I just mean he was just literally what you think in the worst stereotype of a redneck. In terms of booze guzzling, 20 women a day, like no shame about it, STDs here and there, kind of like just out there, you know what I mean? So everybody knew his story. So people ask, how does Bill Clinton become president of the United States from being a nobody? Well, Bill Clinton was one of 5 CIA managers for what we now know as Iran-Contra. He was in direct connection working with the Bushes. The whole thing, yeah. Mena, Arkansas was one of the main points of drug distribution into the United States for Iran-Contra. And went from Mena, Arkansas, CIA planes ran on the half hour. Filled to the brim. Every plane was filled to the brim. Look at a little two-seater, two-prop engine plane. And you could see through the windows, and it barely fits 4 people. These planes used to be filled to the brim. You could look through the window and see kilos of fucking cocaine. Right, and they'd come, and there'd be DOD people there. Arkansas, take them straight on the trucks. They go east, they go west. A lot of them went west to LA, and there was a site in LA, and that's where they manufactured crack. That story came out in '94. I forget, I don't know if it was the LA Times, but that was declassified years ago. How crack was an old program of COINTELPRO that they started working on in the 70s. Bill Clinton was neck deep in that. So when Bill Clinton talks about, I'm the first black president, I'm so down with the black community, and that was one of the biggest psyops in the world. He incarcerated more black people based on his prison programs and his laws and his executive orders. Great. Then you can go back into the real COINTEL more than that. So why people have this in the African American community have this love for Bill Clinton? He's all freaking down. I don't get that.
He was the first black president.
He was cool, and he was a very cool person, and I think he did a big sign-off where he used that and his charm, as a person, cool as hell. In terms of what he did as governor, you know what I mean?
Did not have relations with that woman. Hey, Cowboy Tech showed up. Yeah.
Not just those women also, but I'd like to ask Bill Clinton about those 3 little boys down in Mena, Arkansas, who disappeared on train tracks. Now these 3 little boys were teenagers, and they had the files on Bill, big time. This is when he was governor, when they went through all the proper channels and all that, So I'd like Hillary to answer for that too, because she was around back then. And she knew of that. She knew the state troopers who dug the ditches and buried the bodies. These 3 little boys, were not a threat to anybody. These are just locals in Mena, Arkansas, who happened to walk on the friggin' airport when these people were doing a fucking drop, And they go to the state offices and say, hey, we saw this plane full of cocaine, and we saw these Central American people. They do the right thing, and they turn it in, and they report these people. And within 48 hours, they're tied up on train tracks, run over to the point. They tied these kids on train tracks specifically so they would be decapitated. They found these 3 kids on train tracks, headless, 24 hours later, after they made their official report.
That's how. Yeah, when I'm hoboing, that's how I sleep, with my head laid up on the track. Giggity yak.
Well, that explains your speech impediment, Vince.
But what? Hey, yes, very good, Blackbird. Iran-Contra Israel connection. And Captain Gringo's Smedley Butler, he spread his butter liberally. Smedley Butler had it right, didn't he? And nothing happened.
Wow.
Hey, kill him.
Oh.
Kill him off.
Oh.
Yeah, Butler had it right. War is a racket. Yeah.
And
no one will believe it anyways.
And now a word from our special guest this evening, the Antichrist.
I am here to save you.
Boy, we're going to hell for that one, man.
I am the God of fire, so if anybody is in need of a God to worship, I am available. And
what are your rates?
Listen, avoid the rush. Enter now, and with your prayers and offerings and illuminated candles.
Wait, what is an offering?
Don't be trying to off me. That's okay. You can't kill your God. God is dead.
Why would anybody think of doing a thing like that?
Hey, just shut up and get on your knees, okay? And remember, when you pray to me, do it with your mouth closed. Nobody likes to.
Yeah, that's wow. Have you been smoking those left-handed cigarettes again, Vince?
I got a little pinch hitter right here. Does that count?
Yeah, painkillers. Xanax.
No, not painkiller, pinch hitter.
Yeah, that's what I said. Painkillers, Xanax, heroin. It's all the same shit in it.
Oh, well, no. I mean, for some, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, you sound like one of those drug addicts. You probably.
Hey, I've been in the game. That reminds me. Yeah, I was about to write this. So back in the day, P2P and all that, out in Vegas, old boy I associated with, he was telling me a story. He was paid to park a van in South Central and just get out and walk away. Keys in it, doors unlocked, and filled up with a bunch of guns. So, we see the social engineering. I mean, who's in the hood that's going down there and bringing all that dope in, right? Well, we've tied it in. Not only back to MENA, but and back to Vietnam, but even before that, we take it back to the opiate trade of the empire. And you can go back to Bush's family, predecessors of Prescott Bush, and find them involved in that opiate trade. So it's been the fuel for the machine drugs have. And black marketing, and they call us pirates. Who's the real pirates? I am free upon the sea. Don't you know?
No, you're dead in the sea a long time ago.
Dead in the water,
yeah,
right?
Fuck off.
Yeah, and there is a theme to the Friday show of This Is No Time for Rational Thinking. It is a nautical pirate theme. Ahoy was one, betrayed was two, C was three was contraband. D was deceived. E is going to be exile. So hopefully that's going to work out. Drew, I was going to say, well, I'll say who anyways. Chuck Horton from Double Cross Radio is scheduled to join me, and hopefully he's going to bring somebody along that knows a lot of laws about expatriation and telling us how much more difficult it is to leave the corporatocracy of the United States if you so choose to do so. But for me, I'm going to go with the devil I guess, because I wouldn't want to be in some South American country personally when the hat and the fans all get together, and because it's going to be the gringo. Hey, Captain Gringo, don't be a gringo. Way down low, I guess I'd say. TiNTfRT, Roger. Over. Go ahead.
I got lost in all that.
Hey, Vince. Hey, Vince. I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I was wondering, in that story you were talking about with the van, it reminded me of like dozens of little smaller operations that I've seen growing up here. I was wondering if that guy was, if that guy was young and in the lifestyle. And, young and in the lifestyle. Okay, because they love those types, and I'll tell you why. Because here in DC growing up, I've never seen so many bathhouses, and by bathhouses I don't mean the BATH. I mean the Egyptian dark underworld lord of darkness kind of bath. Yeah. So they love the little ones, male or female. Do you know what I mean? They don't like people in the middle. They like people to be square out, and the reason for that is because you lose credibility and you lose integrity. They put you into a little party, You know, all they need to do is get you once, you know what I mean, with the drugs and the sex, and they figure, well, it doesn't work so much now. Do you know what I mean? This is 70s, 80s when it was a big thing. You know what I mean? You know, if you were out or right, if you even looked like that, but they like the little boys because they give the little boys drugs. And they pick the little boys mainly from the cities, club scene. I have yet to find a hardcore electronic club in a big city in the U.S. that does not have some kind of mafia or government drug runner that supplies it. That goes back to the 90s too with raves. A lot of that stuff was new CIA marketing, IARPA. You know what I mean? That was one of their first big launches, you know, and people on the East and West Coast were like, oh, you know, there's pure this and there's pure that. You got MDMA on the scene, this and that. A lot of it was good stuff, you know what I mean? And there was a lot of it out there. Some of it was a trial program for recruitment. Now here in D.C., oh yeah, you know, we have a park called DuPont Circle, which is known as Circles Work Park. That's where everybody goes if you're into lifestyle. Doesn't matter how far you swing on either end, whatever. Now, if you go to Circles Work Park at any point in time in the day, you're going to find your old festers, your uncle festers, what have you. But you're also going to find a lot of government people. You know what I mean? You can come there in the middle of the day at 2 o'clock in the middle of the day, and you see people in $500, $1,000 suits, silk suits, you know, who are walking the park in the inner ring and looking at the right. A lot of those boys disappear every year. It's one of the biggest scandals in D.C. that we never talk about. We probably have well over 1,000 every year. You know, and they're not all from D.C. They come here or whatever, but that's the place to go. You know what I mean? If you're in lifestyle, probably got 40,000 people down in that neighborhood. You know, but if you're under 25, you know, and you're drunk on the streets down in Circle Jerk, down in DuPont Circle in D.C., yeah, your ass may disappear. That's where Chandra Levy was. That's where they dumped her ass off in the woods down there. You know, there's a whole little park down there. And every 2 or 3 months, there's a dead body that comes up. You know what I mean? And it's not like some high-level banker or something. You know what I mean? It's just some regular street kid. Some regular street kid, you know, who's got all types of stuff in his system, who's a last seen on cameras, you know what I mean? In some government-run sex club, and that stuff is infamous around here. You know, and if you go down there at 2, 3 o'clock on a Saturday night, you see that stuff. You see 18-year-old kids, you know, getting out of big fat limousines with, you know, G's on their license plates. That stuff is heavy duty here. I mean, Hillary Clinton's known for that. She's a high priestess little. I can't say it on air, but she loves her little girls. I'll tell you that. So did George Bush.
She is so hot. I love her.
Who? Yeah, Hillary and her veins and her kinkles. I don't know how she gets these women to do what they do for her, but
money. Are you insane? Come on.
So, on a side note, if you know the difference between shit and shinola, you may well get in with Captain Gringo and corner the jackboot polish market.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can be a full lot too. So it would be then jackboot Polish polish.
Bombs are us. You know, my favorite topic. You guys got to talk about tonight. Guns.
Grammy.
I like it. Oh yeah, you whore. You're going to be going whoring around on Grammy.
Oh, you know what?
Street trash whore. What?
Listen to this.
Yes, sir.
This is a big shout out. Captain Gringo was on last night too. On Primer Time. Listen to the intro to this. You're gonna love it.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Every time you say
start
that.
it over because I have it playing. So hold on just a minute. And I'll have to plug my speakers in.
Cool.
Wait. Hold on.
He gets to push
Let me do this.
This is our train
Okay, you
wreck.
guys mute up.
Train wreck of the night.
All right, mute up. You ready?
2.
Shout out to Primer Time. Michael and Nick and Captain Gringo last night. Let me turn it up. Yeah, buy a gun. All right.
Yeah,
but
hey.
Put the apparatuses, asses, and radishes around.
Captain, I muted my mic on that for about a minute. I was talking to Sirk, and then I realized, wait a minute. So you might not have got that that whole song.
Oh, wait a minute. I still got it playing. Okay, here we go. Hey, so look, we're rounding out the first hour. Patrick, would you like to stick around with us? Because I think there's a lot more we can talk about.
Yeah, I'm hanging, brother.
All right. So, hey, there's Otto. I see him over at UCY. Somebody tell him if he's not tuned in over here, he just missed. Get a gun. Yeah. Buy a gun, right?
Is it true that you have a personal relationship with the Antichrist?
No, I am the Antichrist.
Oh, that's you. What do we call you then? Captain Vince?
No.
Antichrist?
Antichrist.
Ah. Wow. That's confusing. No, are you kidding?
I am the Antichrist.
Wow.
Hey, there's Miguel over there. You guys over here? If you ain't, come get over here side by side. Real Liberty Media. Or worldtruth.org. And I'm over here side by side. Clicked over to channel 24 for UCY.tv. Seeing everybody all at the same time in two places. We're all together separately again. So we'll round out in here in the next few minutes, and then we'll pick back up. While we close out this, won't y'all brainstorm a little bit and think about what you'd like to talk about in the next hour, and you can share it out loud.
Oh, wow. Thank you, sir.
Shout it out loud.
Wow. You had your tongue forked, huh?
Grimner said just call me AC for short.
Yeah, just short. Just short.
Yes.
Well, so we got one no on the revolution there. What do you think, Vince?
I am involved in the revolution as we speak. It is a revolution of the mind, because the mind is the battlefield, don't you know?
Don't I know what?
What I just said.
Oh, I guess I don't.
Oh. You know what I just said.
Yeah, but I live in another country where there's no fun. I don't get all that, repression and police action and shit.
Well, I think you ought to have somebody, okay,
Yeah.
first of all.
Well, I was donating my share to you so that, as my friend, you wouldn't feel that I left you out of my life. So I'm giving you my share of the American dream. You can enjoy it.
It is, after all, a terrible thing to waste.
Hey, well, what little bit of freedom there is left, you better enjoy it.
All you can eat, baby.
You're gonna get it supersized. You're gonna go to the Freedom Buffet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Freedom Palooza next 4th of July. Mr. James Freedom. JJ Inc. Yeah, that's right. MCN. Freedom Palooza. Stay tuned for more on that. Y'all, World Truth will know I had JJ on with me, and archives are following. I'm getting those up to archives.org. I've got a lot more to learn stuff. So there's the end of the hour, and we're coming up to a brand new World Truth Wackadoo Wednesday tonight. Grammy and I are going to do the radio. Somebody might get some giggles.
What's that about? You're becoming a radio slut. You just go on the air with anybody, huh?
Well, wherever you go, there you are, after all. And this is the second hour of talking about when the mind is the battlefield, and I guess this is no time for rational thinking.
Okay, I have a question for anybody. What part of this mind control affects you if you don't believe that it affects you?
Believe. Okay, that's if you break that word down, you can be likely. So, my first thought.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's lots of people that are obviously brainwashed or misled or lied to, whatever you want to call it, right? And they're obviously in our face on a regular basis. But they shine in another area, but you can see that there's some places they won't listen. They got no interest in it.
Yeah, you're a Dewey mix.
Yeah,
that's
right. That's right, man. Anyway, yeah. But
do you self-pitch?
Myself, I don't know about that, but that's pretty interesting now. You know, it does happen sometimes. People get cognitive dissonance, you know, and they have cranial, rectal inversion.
Well, right. So a lot of our opposition is just accusing us of having the problem that they promote. And it works, too. It works against us. It keeps people thinking that we wear tinfoil hats and all that kind of stupid shit. And, we're anarchists and we want to join up and kill each other or something stupid. Just the most ignorant fucking shit comes out of the most indoctrinated people. And they think it's wise and they think they're helping their own or something, but it's just complete nonsense.
I'd love to touch on that for a second. Just,
yeah, well, what's your input on it?
There's lots of propaganda. Specifically what you guys were talking about, you know, how you ended the last hour. When we had our anti-war march in D.C. under Bush in 2004, you know, we were pretty blessed. You know, we had people who came out on all sides. We had libertarians. You know, we had people who were so-called centrists. We didn't really care about labels. It was just like, you know, your mindset and your ideology and what are you into. We didn't care about all those labels, all that bullshit. But what was interesting was these are last years of Rage, you know, Rage Against the Machine. Rage came out and they said, oh yeah, let's work for you guys, you know, and all of that. And we loved that. We were like, okay, yeah, we got Rage in D.C. And this is when Rage Against the Machine was hot, you know, it was fucking red hot. So they came to D.C. And if anybody wants to look it up, they played D.C. many times. They played all over the United States. Their first time playing here was April 16th, 2000. That was the second large protest that we had in the United States. If you go back, people remember the Battle of Seattle, which became a movie, and that was 99, the last year of Clinton. You know, and they had this big protest in Seattle against the IMF and the World Bank, which people may know is tied into the UN, blah, blah, blah. So they wanted to keep that shit going, you know, and lots of heads, you know, on the West Coast, both, I guess you could say far left and far right, you know, they were reaching out, you know, they said, hey, you know, this is not really about, you know, Democrat or Republican, you know, it's getting late in the game, we got stuff to do, let's get it done. Right. So a year later, we have A16 in D.C. You know, in Clinton's last year, he rolled out these domestic, I don't know if people remember this, but it didn't start with Bush, it actually started in 98 and 99, officially, in terms of the Clinton and domestic laws, in terms of domestic terrorism. That's when it sort of started, you know, and Rage came out, and what scared them the most was the fact of Rage's influence, and I think maybe that we had 500,000 people, and then when people knew within 24 hours that Rage Against the Machine was playing, you know, that shit went way up to close to like 1 million. You know, we had people coming in from New York and Florida and all types of stuff. You know, and it tore the place down. We played across the street from, you know, the White House, and Secret Service were out here like little G.I. Joe, you know, demons running around with their heads cut off because they didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? I mean, we were black blocked up. You know what I mean? We were black blocked up to the fucking nines. You know, we had at least 10,000 deep. You know, if you ever see the streets of D.C., we had 5 whole streets on the mall deep. You know, black blocked, and it scared the hell out of them. And there was no violence. We weren't throwing bottles. We weren't breaking windows. You know, we were feeding homeless people. You know, we were feeding homeless people. We were cutting grass on lawns for elderly people in D.C. We were doing all of this volunteer service, and we went around the country, and every city that we hit with politics, we were doing volunteer work. You know, and then within 2 to 3 years, the government had twisted that into all anarchists are violent. You know what I mean? Yeah, all this bullshit. Every time you see an anarchist protesting, you're gonna get hurt. You know, or they're gonna have knives, guns, or want to blow shit up. And we, you know, and for the life of us, we were just like, what the hell is this crap? You know what I mean? But that's how much we scared them. You know, because those are the people that came out with us were not just kids. You know, we had some old timers in 2000. You know, and I mean, by old timers, I mean, you're 25, and we had people who were 65 and 70, coming out of the woodworks, far right, far left, you name it. You know, and they were like, you guys are the only people who were involved doing anything in the last 20 years. You know, we're not necessarily with you politically, but you're doing it.
Yeah, it's a group. It's a group with no membership.
Yeah, and that's what scared them. You know, I mean, beyond the obvious of no government. You know, and we were doing it. You know, we were forming our little collectives. We didn't want state money, county money. We didn't want any of that.
Nope.
You know, and we were fueling our own campaigns. Anybody from D.C. that wanted to go on the caravan and you wanted to ride to Baltimore, we paid your way. You know, and we gave you housing if you wanted to go from D.C. to Baltimore to Philly to New York. We paid your way. I mean, we had free housing. You know, we had collectives set up all over the United States. It was free. I mean, we had some people who were on our caravan for weeks. We had some people who were on our caravan for the whole year. We had a follow-up protest the next summer in 2001. And that was big because by then Bush was in for about 6-7 months. You know, he was already talking war then. And we had planned this war. I mean, we had planned this protest not really knowing, you know what I mean, who was going to be in office. It was just a continuation of, you know, the ideology and the meme and all that. But we were shocked because when we did the protest the next summer, we had people who literally came off the road, several hundred people who came off the road. You know what I mean, who just kept going with it.
So 9/11 shut you up pretty good then, huh?
9/11 was really hardcore for, I mean, it depends on, you know, what level of game it's in. But I mean, but for me, being in DC and running with types like that, I mean, they were not messing around. I mean, the day that I set up for volunteering for the protest, and I was helping with this place that was specifically called the Anti-Capitalist Convergence Center, and we were housing anarchists and socialists. We didn't care if you were farthest right wing from anywhere to farthest left wing. We were housing you for free. We would hear what you had to say. We were putting it down on record. We were taking notes and we were strategizing. We put this in the middle of a neighborhood called Adams Morgan in D.C., which is completely Hispanic. They were all on the side. You know, they were like, you know, Viva la Revolution. You know, they had no clue what the fuck we were talking about, but they were down. Right. So they gave us a whole warehouse. They gave us a whole warehouse, a 4-acre warehouse, you know, from some abandoned, you know, landscaping thing. And they were like, you can use it, no problem. I mean, all I did was I put my name down on that thing, and within 6 hours I had choppers flying over the whole 9 yards. They did a sweep on us in D.C. For that protest. It's the largest, I think, to date in record in the United States of arrests. They arrested 17,000 people in one day.
That was 15 years ago. Things have changed since then, haven't they?
Nowadays, people can come out. You know, some people went into the closet back then. Because, you know, people were hurt and people were disappearing. You know, if you were on the front lines, you know, I don't mean physically, but on the net, if you just put your name associated with something, you know, no matter how many proxies you went through, they got these high-level supercomputers even back then. You know, they'd find you within an hour and your phone would ring. You know, and the games would begin. Like, literally, I mean, that happened to me, like, within the first hour. You know, and I was behind 7 different proxies on this thing called Tor. You know, the Tor network. Tor network is what all the military use, plus 20 other different things. Tor network is also what all the U.S. police use. You know what I mean? And they're standard on Tor. Back in the day, I was using Tor, you know, through 4 or 5 different proxies, and they still found it within an hour. And I wasn't even broadcasting from my house. I'm just like, what the fuck? I mean, these guys, and they're still on it like that now. It's even... Right, and you have to be very smart, very tactical about how you come out, you know what I mean? Because, I mean, yeah. But back then... Let me add this before it gets away from me and chat a real liberty meeting here. This comes from Blackbird. She says this concept of cognitive dissonance open buffet within the movement, i.e. everyone has their boundaries and comfort zones within their worldview, is at the core of her work. The Pepper Plan. And she gives a communication model rather than trying to give the right answer. And I think that's fantastic because I think that's the most important thing we can be doing is communicating. And the trivia method, I think, has been working really well for me to help me sort through, you know, ideas, notions, beliefs that, you know, I held so dear. And you know, and some I still do. And But I come about it logically, so I think we're in a pretty good place about, you know, my worldview. But continuing. I like where you're coming from. I like where you're coming from with that, and that was one of the tactics that we used. I mean, we used a lot of them, but I think one of our core, in terms of communication and expression, in our strategy meetings, and they were all open. You know what I mean? I mean, they were open to the point of open, which is pretty crazy when you're in DC, because we had all types in DC, and we had this 4-acre warehouse, and we had open meetings, and you could sometimes very clearly see people there. You know what I mean? What's that?
Do you know anything about this? She says that she bases it on a seven levers and layers. 7-layer OSI communication model used when they were designing and building the internet. And she says we had all these very different proprietary companies that all had to come together to make it work while maintaining their own identity. So I guess this must be really early on. I'm a complete.
Yeah, that sounds like early on stuff in terms of that sounds like internet days, and it's hard to say nowadays because a lot of the upper level stuff they're using quantum computing and who the hell knows, but a lot of that stuff was dished out and privatized. I want to give you an example, for this, in terms of this summer, a lot of people have heard of operation was called Jade Helm. Jade Helm actually originated as Jade, and that is a actual software program that was developed here in Washington, D.C. It actually began out of a local college here, which is a suburb in College Park, Maryland. If you've ever heard of the University of Maryland, they have the #1 cyber team in the United States in terms of civilian colleges, universities, you name it, hands down. You become the University of Maryland, and that's your degree. Within a year, you'll be interning, and kissing ass at NSA, and learning the best tricks that they got, what have you. So, University of Maryland originated the JADE program, the JADE software, back in 1999, thought up by a bunch of friggin' students, you know what I mean, on their entry-level cyber team, way back then. So now the University of Maryland, they win almost every year. They have these cyber competitions, who can hack who, and it's all legal. This is white hat hacking, it's legal, fair game. And they do it here, and it's sort of like candidate school, for the government. The government will come and say, legally, we give you so many hours, take your team, let's see if you can break into whatever, no charges, no legal penalties, but you must do it in this little government office where we can, watch every keystroke, blah, blah, blah. So University of Maryland, they're on it. They've been on it for years. They're one of the best teams out there in terms of training and all that. They began the JADE program, which started off as a very, very small software program. They were contracted out by DoD, which they do often to colleges and universities. So University of Maryland had it. What was it? BB&T Technologies, I think, was the corporation that had the license. Right now, it's a company called ICE Inc. ICE Inc. If you Google ICE Inc., they are the company that has the proprietary license and rights to the software known as JADE. The Helm part of Jade Helm is the targeting aspect dealing with the artificial mind hive supercomputers that they're building both in DoD headquarters, DARPA, and IARPA. So, those three agencies, making the Trident, using the supercomputers, they dish out a little bit at a time, and it does change hands. Every 2 or 3 years, what's known as the Jade software changes hands. I think ICE has licensing for another 2 years or something, and they can renew it, they can sell it off to somebody, what have you, blah, blah, blah. And there's kickbacks. There's kickbacks that go back to, the original coders and blah, blah, blah. Everybody who's connected with it, down the road gets a little bit of piece of it, and all of that. So, but that's Jade Helm, and that stuff still goes on here, and there is a huge cognitive dissonance. There's whole warehouses of people here in DC who do stuff like that. If you talk to them on the street and you're like, do you realize what you're working on? Do you realize that you're working on BIOS switches, on top of what's already going on in terms of DNA encoding? And they'll just look at you like a glaze. I mean, they know what you're talking about. but they can't connect emotionally, you know what I mean, to the reality of it. Because they're so caught up with the money of it. I mean, these people make good money. You know what I mean? You could be
that's
you could be a low-level coder, and they'll start you at 80,000 and give you a national security letter. So you can't talk about this shit for 30 years. You know what I mean?
By the way, Blackbird's a dude, by the way.
Okay.
I was calling him her, and hi Graham, at work, and welcome to the Iron Sheik, who's joined us in chat. And so, in fact, I don't even know how you say that word. Did that link work for you there in chat? Didn't work. So, look, I'm going to be talking to Grammy Mary tonight about some of this stuff, and she, of course, won't have the answers.
Wow, you're never going to get any talking like that.
No, technical questions, but I'm just going to pick her brain about world truth, and so I hope Grimmer will be here. He'll be able to field any questions too about the technical end on some questions I'll be having. Thanks to yesterday to Steve Moore. He spent a bunch of time with me yesterday afternoon and walked me through some stuff. So, yeah, I'm a complete technotard, really. I couldn't get $80 a year for a job that is paying $80,000. But so, anyways, I've got the links that Flash is providing of the show. He's recorded it, so I've been able to take that over to archives.org, and I've created a site there. So when this is done, I will. It won't take me very long to translate it over there, and I can come back with a link because I think it was Maddie asking earlier, Maddie Blues, if there would be an archive, and there will be, and we'll provide that around. To add to that, I can drop some links, as well on some of the stuff that I'm talking about. If you want to know more. About the DNA encoding data switches and what's going on with IARPA, or if people want to know about what's going on with JDown, I have a white paper that I can drop, stuff like that, if people are interested later on the show. Yeah, you can drop those in chat. I would suggest that you could come over and sign up as anybody you want to at World Truth, make you up an email or whatever. You know as well as I know, and as most others, if we don't have any national security secrets, but at least I don't. or none that I'm telling you.
You are a national security.
Grammy don't know shite, nor do I. So yeah, we're gonna.
I wanted to throw something in there with the stuff that we're talking about. Lately, if you guys have heard about the new high computing performance initiative that Obama's trying to start. I don't know if you guys have heard about that.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so it's this high computing initiative. He wants to put everything on supercomputers, digitalize everything. For these archives, he wants to start a national archive, what have you. So he's doing this. This was like right around Halloween, but he made this announcement. It's a UN-based. They call it Clean Streets, but what it is, it's what I was talking about with the data switches and the encoding. So they've been mind mapping, and they've been taking our DNA in various different ways and encoding us for a while now, probably for about 20 years. So they're at the point now where, according to them, they've mapped 80% of the U.S. Like they could really give a shit less. And if there's any resistance, because according to them, through stealing of information, medical files, this and that, blood books, you name it, they have what they need. So just that alone is enough for them. So Obama's going to put all this into high gear, and he announced this right after Halloween. And many people missed it. It wasn't some congressional thing. He announced that the U.S. went into treaty with the UN for this global police force, which is going to kick out, I hear, this spring. You know what I mean? That they're building this warehouse here in D.C. It's something like 50, 70 acres. And this is not for information gathering. This is for the bio switches. This is just for bio control. These databases would just handle that aspect of it in terms of what we were talking about before, in terms of targeted individuals. So being able to find you wherever in the U.S., they have that technology down. So now they're rolling out, I guess what they can call stage 2. You know what I mean? They have all the technology. They have all the mapping down. There's very few of us left. You know, probably people like me and you who are off the grid, what have you, yada, yada, yada. So, but Obama put this into action with the Justice Department through a group called the Criminal Intelligence Coordinating Council. The council was born in 2004. It was a Bush brainchild for, I don't know what everyone call it, you know, thought police, that kind of BS on a national level. With the FBI, but Obama's kicking it into high gear. And by spring, it's supposed to be operational. It's built on the Jade software, but there's 3 or 4 other types of software that they're using. And this is to implement the UN NATO plan of having the global information grid up and running by 2020. That's not just people's information, where you're born and your social security number and all that stuff. It's global DNA encoding and the whole 9 yards, and they're taking it down to the chromosome level on everybody. Now you see in the news how there are different civilian agencies that are flying around South America and Africa, and they're finding lost villages and tribes of people. You know, and there's new tribes that we're discovering every month in the Amazon here and there, people that we never knew before existed there. That's part of this whole global surveillance thing. You know, their whole goal on paper is not to leave 1 inch of the planet, you know, untouched by 2020. The whole map, the whole world map. It's on everything, animals, oh my God, animals, humans, you name it. So, in terms of the United States, the program, to back up for a little bit, the U.S. has been in a military exercise for almost a complete year now. People think that we're still in the NATO exercise of Trident Junction, which is coming up. I don't know if it's already ended or if it's coming up on the end of that now. But ever since January of last year, we've been in one military exercise after another. They keep changing the location and the names of these programs, but it's been consistent. Before Jade Helm, was it Operation Lockdown? I forget the name of it. But if you just Google U.S. military exercise April and May, or the 2-month exercise they ran across 10 different states. So then they take that into a 9-state operation of Jade Helm, which lasted into May, June, July, August, after the first week of September. As soon as that exercise ended, another military exercise ended, which was and that military operation was for 6 weeks. That was supposed to lead up to Operation Trident Juncture, which was the United Nations NATO Special Operations Command. If you Google NATO S.OG, Special Operations Group, that's NATO's Special Forces. And they're the ones who are basically running all global information gathering operations, which includes the refugees in Europe. You know, that's a NATO operation. That is a operation. That's Operation Gladio B. It's 2 operations in one, but yeah. So most people can find the information if you Google Operation Gladio. Operation Gladio was set during World War II. We had left behind civilian armies, some that we trained for guerrilla fighting in case, you know, Russia reinvaded Europe, blah, blah, blah. It never really materialized and happened. And then starting in the late 70s and 80s, the UN, specifically NATO, but UN worked with them, had this great, brilliant, evil idea of using these guerrilla armies to destabilize European politics for whatever, our own agenda. So now there are, and most of those people are gone, they're dead and gone, or what have you. They've been used up in battle as collateral damage. So now we're on Gladio B, you know, and these are new people that in our time period we all know about, trained, you know, coming up, talking about Al-Qaeda, different Al-Qaeda cells, you know, and now 15 years later we're talking about, you know, Al-Nusra Front, and all this other BS. These are all CIA front groups within, you know, Operation Gladio B. We will move them wherever we need to move them globally. You know, our favorite candidates now are working with Muslims to terrorize people. You know, it's a big psychological operation. You look at the definition of terror, you know, NATO is basically running state-sponsored terrorism through their special operations command for the purpose of changing European and United States politics. So the sad part is that our president and our last three presidents have been in on it. And this ties back to their operations. One being agenda. People have heard of Agenda 21, and I don't know what we're on now, Agenda 30 or some crap or whatever. But
doesn't matter. Come on.
It's all tied together.
Right. You know what? My favorite part about
you're talking about this strain.
The media doesn't speak a word of fucking truth to the public ever about.
Yeah. What's up? What's up, Ian?
So the media never speaks.
Welcome,
truth.
Walter and Jack, and for you at Real Liberty Media and World Truth, you'll know Saul Veneur as Walter, and he broadcasts the Saul Veneur event, and he is in Holland. So Saturdays at 4 p.m. I count Walter as one of my teachers. I got a few people that I really appreciate. Hal being a big one. Jules. I have teachers that I listen to on very regularly and almost always. So if you're not listening to Walter, he brings some very good topics on as far as communication skills in the Trivium. I really, really like that. Matter of fact, it was he that introduced me to that way of thinking, and he initially challenged me on some of things that I'd said, and caused me to have a responsibility in what it is I'm actually saying, and that requires an examination of the evidence and by using the proper grammar. So many times what we're saying sounds the very same thing somebody else is saying, but it means something completely different. And I think that this is very important and communication skills. So I'm continually learning. I don't have answers, but we're talking about things, right? So we have Earth Defense Force as our guest today. Really appreciate you joining in. I've heard you several times. You've called in with Lonnie Clark, and you've called in elsewhere, and very articulate. You have a lot of information to share. A lot of experience in life. So we got to do what we can where we can, and engage the machine, and also it's just as important to remember disengage where we can as well, because where do you want your energy directed? If you can step off that wheel right there, let that thing kind of wind down if you can, and move on along to maybe pouring a little syrup somewhere else, right?
There you go. Yeah. We have to be very careful about what we're letting into our brains, because they're running nonstop 24/7, meme programs. They're all about that, nowadays, messing with people's heads, and deconstructing. They actually sit in buildings and study, deconstruction of ideologies and how to deconstruct them. It's kind of sick stuff, but that's what they do. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of rhetoric out there, and it has no basis in deeper thought or understanding at all, and they go for that. There's military runs whole classes in gaslighting. How to just emotionally set somebody off, so that their communication is off and they're not emotionally grounded and centered and can't express themselves well. And these are all distraction, and avoidance techniques. And if you survive that, if you can get through their rhetoric and their BS, and you actually have some understanding. They have a little bit of respect for you. They may not like you, they may still try to kill you, but they have a little bit of respect for you because they don't think of you as an actual sheep. So that's how they think about it. You know what I mean? If you're dumb enough to eat GMO food, if you're dumb enough not to question what we hand you, then you get what you get. You know what I mean? And that's the whole ideology of sheep, and it's used commonly in the service, like every day. We're thought of as that, they call us that, and so, they have very little respect for us, in terms of the fact that they say most people don't know how to think, and those that do are so lazy or whatever, they rarely put time to it, so they get what they deserve. Now, I don't believe that, but that's mainstream thinking in the military. Like, the people are too stupid to understand what we're doing, even when we tell them. Well, right. That's what they say. They're like, well, then they deserve it. Like with the cloned food, there's a common joke in D.C. about that. Well, we told them 15 years ago. We told them with what's her face, the sheep. that we were calling in. Yeah, Dolly the sheep. That was their big rollout of propaganda. And so they laughed. And they're like, we told them that we were going to clone animals. We told them they're not put it in the food. You know what I mean?
What's so funny is where, the sheep are building their fence even stronger to keep other sheep out. And the other sheep are actually leading some sheep to slaughter and others to be sheared.
Yes, that's true. The sense that I get is they're kind of, clamping down, and they're more like just out for themselves now, because they realize that the crap is hitting the fan, not just in the U.S., but globally. If you look at what's going on in Iceland, we had the crash in 2008. Iceland didn't take that. They went after their bankers. They went after their bankers really hard, and they arrested a whole good number of them. I think there's about 3 dozen that are still in jail. They took away licenses and you can't practice this. And they were smart on what they were doing in terms of attacking, fraud contract, an illegal strongman, in terms of intergovernmental treaties and all this stuff. So they didn't expect that. They just expected a mental, emotional, moral revolt in the U.S. They didn't expect it to spread globally. Sort of like whack-a-mole that they're playing, where there's U.S. Joint Special Operations Command. And they're trying to work with Joint Special Operations Command with all these militaries in all these different countries. They're trying to play whack-a-mole and hit us down because they've lost control. Basically, to them, they have lost control. They've never had a space where people are questioning the global banking system, royal bloodlines, the invention of the strongman, understanding it, taking it back to Vatican. So they're freaked out because they have no backup plan. It's the only plan they've had for like 2,000 years. And if it falls apart and people realize it can come up in the masses, that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of people revolting in mass and storming the gates, not just in the United States, but like globally. That's why they have their bunkers and all that stuff. People go ahead.
Let me ask you this, and so we're obviously there's a slow kill going on now. There's many aspects of that you've been discussing, as well as the food, all the poisons in our environment. So and for chance that there is really just going into overdrive awareness and people saying, hey, this is kind of gone too far, ain't it? Do you see some kind of them ramping it up and of course causing any number of false flags and then causing people to riot through the streets and getting a revolution going and hey, let's let the flood flow type of deal?
Yeah, they've been working on stuff the last couple of years, because of people like you getting the word out, and enlightening mind, a lot of their plans have failed. Of course we know in the United States that something like, I forget what the official tally is, but it's something close to like 73, 74, 5% of all the terrorist acts since 2001 are government sponsored. You know what I mean? Somebody wants to make a bomb, and it was FBI agents who gave them the actual intelligence to know how to make the bomb. And it gave them the live ammo material. Like you had that one guy in New York with a car bomb, and the car bomb failed, but they found the car loaded to the max. And the dude was like, I didn't even know how to make a bomb like that, And the guy who was in my cell, who kind of my terrorist cell, who turned out to be an FBI agent, was the one who taught me all this stuff. There was another guy back to Oklahoma. He's very infamous on record, and he was a CIA troll paid informant. He's the guy that put the fucking bomb in the truck, and he knew that he was being set up, so he recorded his conversation with his CIA and FBI handler. And he said, wait a minute, you want me to replace the dummy explosives with the real explosives? Are you sure? You know what I mean? They tried to frame him for life, as a Middle East terrorist, and he had these tapes, and he came out and he said, no, I've been working with you guys for like 12 years. You can't set me up on some bullshit and call me the mastermind terrorist. You guys taught me how to do this crap. That's an old program. That's a really old program. So how many terrorist acts do we really have? I'd probably say very few. Like very few. I'd probably say in the last 15 years, we probably had 3 or 4 real terror incidents out of 200. The rest are government sponsored. They want us to go into this frenzy where we start killing each other, slaughtering Muslim people just for being Muslim. They're creating every type of social engineering deconstruction plan that you can think of. Gays against the world, blacks against everybody. Oh, we're coming for you Jews again. And they're ramping up everybody with these gaslighting techniques. And very little of it is is actually true, except for the white genocide thing. White genocide in terms of destabilization of Europe, that is an actual plan. Destabilization of Europe and Western cultures, that's an actual plan. Sadly, not thought up by Obama. It was thought up by the United Nations and NATO Special Operations Group. But I mean, in terms of coming up recently, we have an operation of Black Lives Matter, where they're supposed to set stuff off in the springtime. Hillary and Soros and all these like little evil fuckers are working together to set off a race riot. The last 7 shootings of young black males really haven't worked. You know what I mean? Some of them are legitimate, you know what I mean? But they're the ones who are going in and pushing that. I don't know if people know this, but Black Lives Matter is actually financed by George Soros. George Soros finances Black Lives Matter. He also helped finance the Occupy movement. Now, Occupy movement started out of an ad agency in Canada. That ad agency in Canada got the same idea and their marching orders from a group in, not Greece, I forget. I have a file on it, but that group is specifically funded by Soros, has CIA links up and down, the yin yang. They use the same symbol of the open hand. I don't know if you guys remember that symbol, but the ad agency in Canada, who started that with the hand thing. I mean, psychological operations coming up. Black Lives Matter before the election. And there's another one planned for the summer to guarantee that there is emotional support for the war. We also have one coming up for Christmas. I don't know what that is. I can't find anything on that. But from what I hear in D.C., there's going to be something, a nasty Christmas surprise to make sure that the high computing initiative legislation and the gun grab goes through. Now, the gun grab is totally... It's they're trying to tie it to the no-fly list, and if anybody's done past political, about 75% of the people on the no-fly list are there because of their political activism. That are go ahead.
I've got a litmus test. I'd like to just go ahead and do this. I haven't done it yet here, considering this is no time for rational thinking. But with the Chile effect, all his guests, the standard litmus test was dancing Israelis. Now, Chuck was my guest Monday, and we discussed the JFK conspiracy over the last 50 years. So it's a running joke. The dancing Israelis. Let me derail you here a minute. And what do you know about the dancing Israelis that Trump called Muslims?
I have a file on that. It's through, I should say, Freedom of Information Act, and I did that living here in D.C. locally. Because when that happened, I actually fell for it, and I believed it. And then about 6 weeks later, I believe the FBI director was Director Mueller at the time. Mueller was a staunch, player in the game. He was on board 100% for Bush. He saw some things, he heard some things he didn't like. He didn't want to be a traitor in a sense, but he did want to let some things out of the bag. And that was one of the things that he let out of the bag, where everybody knew that they were Mossad. When the FBI picked them up, they were known in the database Mossad agents, and there were 3 different groups of them. I'm not sure if it was Trenton, New Jersey, where they were located out of, but there were 3 groups. There were 2 in New York, there was 2 in New Jersey, and there was 1 in New York. The group in New Jersey was caught. What was it? I don't know if it was 12 hours later or if it was 24 hours later, but they were already being monitored because the FBI knew when they came into the United States. Through facial recognition, they were like, "Oh, these people are Mossad. We're not going to really follow them and shit, but what they're doing here." Yeah, we have thousands of Mossad agents that literally walk the United States every single day, and our FBI knows it. I mean, talk about infiltration. So FBI knew within 72 hours that the entire dancing Muslim thing was a group of Mossad agents who mysteriously were let go and flown out of the United States on a State Department jet. So, go roll me that one. A bunch of Mossad agents.
Not to worry. They did reappear on Israeli TV.
Yeah. They have dude. I forget the dude's name, and his specialty, and if people have translators, you can actually I got the file off of. I mean, the language is so difficult. It took me a while to translate it, and they have a similar process of freedom of information, but the guy's whole profile is friggin' on the net. He was trained in explosives. He'd be the equivalent of what we'd call a specialist, in the U.S. Army. And that's what the dude did for his whole entire military career. He was an explosives technician, specialist. Yeah, and I'm like, you have the balls to go on Israeli TV and be like, oh, I don't know why they arrested me. I mean, come on, Yeah, and he admitted it too. He's like, yeah, the FBI picked me up. They let us go. Yeah, we're Mossad. I'm like, you're admitting this on TV? You're admitting that you broke U.S. law and infiltrated our country, did spy work, that you're trained in explosives, and you just happen to be there. And you had a group that's also Mossad in the same friggin' building. Right. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna trust you guys. I mean, these guys are, and I don't even know, because I've heard these operations, and they have no qualms about slaughtering their own. They will let Israel come over here and kill us for a political operation. Israel will let our special forces go over there and slaughter them for a political operation. I don't know if people know this, but Mossad, since the 70s, that's their favorite tactic, to dress up as Arabs. You know what I mean? And they do the shit well by their skin color. They've got the phonetics down. They have whole language schools where they'll take you to these language schools for months before you even hit the field so that your accent is perfect. And they fool people very well. They'll go deep into Arab villages in Pakistan and Iran, and they'll fool people. They're like, oh, yes, I'm from the Peshmerga Mountains, just like you, and blah, blah, blah. And they'll have the perfect dialect. It's kind of sick stuff, you know what I mean? So that was one of their operations that they were running, which they run all the time in the Middle East and get away with. But we're good, you know what I mean? We're not, I wouldn't say we're better than them, but we're good, we got bigger numbers. They're the size of fucking Jersey. We're 320 million. So we got the numbers to watch every single one of them. And, we happened to catch them that time, and they had the balls to actually admit it. And the cognitive dissonance, again, people in D.C., I'm going around, I'm like, you're admitted to Mossad agents. That is a clear violation of about 20, 30 different federal law. People just glaze over and look at you. I'm like, yeah. If we did that in a foreign country, our asses would be so shot up. Other countries wouldn't play with us. They just friggin' torture us for a couple of weeks and kill us. We let these people come and go, at will. Oh yeah, you're Mossad. Sure, come in. We're not going to monitor you. Yeah. We literally have thousands of Mossad agents every single day operating in the U.S. under, the telephone company that ran the cables to all the towers, Mossad. You know what I mean? The head of security for the towers, Bush brother. His whole family's neck deep in Mossad. It's you can just look at it and see, in your face operation. But yeah, so in terms of recent operations, they're planning a Christmas surprise. Black Lives Matter is planning a spring, surprise. And then that's what I hear. The war is supposed to be on by summer, from what I hear. Turkey is a major player in the NATO SOG Special Operations Group, which is running all types of state-sponsored terrorism out of Turkey. I hear it's $500 billion a month that they're running through Turkey. Not just oil. They're running Afghani copies. There's $50 to $70 million a day that they're making on the illegal oil trade, most of which is being bought by Turkey, but France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Libya. Other countries are buying this stuff. So it's not like people don't know. You can catch them on the paper and say, oh, England, you are sponsoring terrorism by buying shipments of oil in Turkey from ISIS. But if you went to if you went to MI5 or MI6 and said this, they would laugh at you and you'd become a targeted individual.
It's all the drugs, money, and guns. With the drugs, with the guns, and the oil, you've got to be able to get some money over there for these guys that ain't producing poppies, right? So you can have this it is us guys over there, Al Qaeda, CIA, right? So that's a good name for it. Yeah, I think that's the main reason why we're seeing this oil being run across the border, so that they can get them some money. Because you gotta have stuff to better than rocks for a good fight.
Oh, here's something else. If I want to be evil, I can make it evil and make it simple. And you see these Americans who go over there and they join the YPG, or there's three branches, the Kurdish fighters. Kurdish people are so cool. They're sending out 17-year-old friggin' teenage girls to fight ISIS, and they're kicking ISIS's ass. I mean, and they have real serious stuff going on. I mean, these are like people with no training. They've been asking us for 4 or 5 years. Just fucking airdrop us some heavy weaponry. You know what I mean? We'll do the fighting for you. Just friggin' drop us some weaponry. They're using like 1970s AK-47s, but they're still sending out 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old female girls with like 2 weeks of training, and they're kicking their asses. You know what I mean? So this is my theory. You bring me one of those fucks. You just bring me one of those fucks in your uniform. If you notice on TV, they all wear brand new uniforms, which are not Middle Eastern uniforms. If you go through every army in the Middle East and Persia, these are not Persian or Middle Eastern uniforms by any stretch of the means, going back 80, 90 years. But they look exactly like certain European countries, in terms of BDUs for certain armed forces that I won't name, but it's friggin', if you're in the service, you can pen this stuff within like minutes, and it's so obvious. You're like, why are they wearing fucking Navy BDUs that look like they came straight out of, you know what I mean? And you go look at that country's like, military uniform, it's the spitting image, exactly the same. Like, why would these people over here who hate Westerners be wearing a military uniform from their country, which is brand spanking new, not even a drop of mud on their uniforms, with brand new Toyotas, you can track the VIN numbers back. And I bet you it all comes out of, European Central Command, somewhere out of Brussels, Belgium. Oh, wow, that happens to be the headquarters of NATO, Special Operations Group. I mean, they have a training center there, and all the shit comes out of the same place. It's all coming from one place, from Europe to Turkey, just like the gun running operation. When Hillary Clinton ran that operation, killed Gaddafi because he had the gold, takes the gun, ships it from Libya to Ukraine, and it's in the media. And 2 years ago, there were reports on .gov and .mil sites about how we had special forces in Ukraine. Last winter they had the big, before the elections, they had the big massacre. World political groups, U.S. State Department official gets caught on the phone, blasted all over CNN how we're handpicking the next leader of Ukraine. That was days before the protest. Sports political groups marched. 3 of them are safe. The political group that we picked is backed by a group called Svoboda. Now, so Svoboda is far right-wing nationalists. You know what I mean? And so they were the only ones not to be hit in that parade. There's videos all over YouTube about this. Tens of thousands of people marched in Ukraine for political groups. The group that was not touched is the group that ends up winning power in Ukraine that we back Svoboda, which is far right-wing nationalists, so forth and so on.
Lost me, Vince. What happened?
I'm back. Yeah, I was here, and sounds like you got company.
Yeah, everything's good. My mouse died for some. My computer just froze up.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's where we are now. You know what I mean? We ran a coup in Ukraine. We've been busted using our special forces in NATO. We took out Libya. Now we're squaring off, in Iran and Syria, and everybody knows the deal with that in terms of the central banks. So we want to get our hands on the central. We want to put them into the central bank, so they're under control of the Bank of International Settlements. Bank of International Settlements controls all the central banks. They're like the last 3 or 4, in the entire planet that are not, run by the BIs. So that's been the plan back since PNAC, and even before that. Democrat, Republican doesn't really matter. Because Obama's been running the agenda for 7 years now. Hillary comes in, she'll just finish up the agenda. It doesn't really matter if it's Hillary or Carson or, it doesn't really matter. That's the plan they're going for, though, and they're not waiting for the election. The plan is to start it off this summer, before the elections, because they actually think that the next president may not be down, and they're scared, so they're trying to do it now. Like with the Turkey shoot-down thing. Turkey had a military alliance with Russia. I don't know if people know that Turkey and Russia had a temporary military pact. So Russia actually had permission to fly over Turkish airspace and they were actually in the country working with them on joint terrorism activities. So it was all legal.
Then, it goes on, the same old narrative, and we just keep going for it. I guess as long as they ain't knocking on our door, right? That's a great one, the hangman. Do a search on that. That's pretty cool. So, look, I'm still waiting on confirmation from Charles Horton. Episode 5, Friday, is Exile. Let me try again. All right, there we go. So, episode 5 of This Is No Time for Rational Thinking is Exile, Expatriation, and Why One Would Choose to Relocate. And that is Friday noon Central on World Truth, Real Liberty Media. Guest Charles Horton from Double Cross Radio, and hopefully James Gooseman of Borderless Podcast. So he may join the call, and he knows a lot about the new laws that are making it increasingly difficult to leave the U.S. I shared this post to World Truth, and this comes from Larkin Rose, and I got it from Double Cross Radio. Great show too. I really love listening to Chuck. Matter of fact, I used to be right between him and where Ron Stevens is now, and that spot is occupied by the great Al Anthony, who did the week's broadcast that originates Sunday is rebroadcast. So if you tune in Thursday nights to listen to Hal, simulcast from Real Liberty Media World Truth here at UCY.TV, and go back over to the blogcaster, not podcaster, blogcaster. I see you just popped up. The blogcaster page, and you can follow along with all those links right there and make it an enhanced education of the lessons learned from behind the woodshed. Anyways, here we go. I go back to this, saying I'm not scared of the Maos or the Stalins and the Hitlers. I'm scared of the thousands of millions of people that hallucinate them into authority and do their bidding and pay for their empires and carry out their orders, right? These are the people that are the scary ones, right? Not these people behind the curtain, because they're just men after all. But add in all this control that they've got in the guns. So he just says, I don't care if there's one loony with a stupid mustache. He's not a threat if the people do not believe in authority. Larkin Rose, thank you. Larkin Rose is original and innovative. I can't say it. He is an original and innovative thinker. And Chuck says, I love the way his words cut through to the truth time and time again. We need more Larkin Rose type thinking in this world. Charles Horton, Double Cross Radio. I agree. I had a great honor of meeting him out in Las Vegas last year in filming that. Got on my YouTube channel. Only for historical purposes, but if you look, Larkin Rose in Vegas, there's a lot better quality. Mine's crap, but hey, what matters? Be easily, Vincent Easley. You can find my YouTube. And if you're at World Truth, you'll see it pop up over there on my page every now and then. And I'm over here scrolling on Facebook, but I sure love World Truth. But I was looking for some stuff over here, and I found that one. So, anyways. We're rounding out the hour. Remember that you have the power to change the world. I appreciate you joining us, Patrick. I appreciate everybody listening that hopped the fence and come over here and stood side by side at Real Liberty Media World Truth. Thanks, Scrimmer. Thanks, Grimmy. Thank you, Jules. Y'all are really, really awesome. And a shout out to Jeff Orbison. I'm glad you're back in the saddle, alive and well.
Thank you, brother man. Thank you, brother man. I've enjoyed being on.
I appreciate it. Would you like to give us some closing words and tell us what matters to you worldwide?
People like you and people like you and what you guys do every single day. Just putting heads together and sharing knowledge. And keeping the faith. And I mean, for me, the best thing is. Like, again, people like you, keeping the mindset, that we can beat this thing. It's not over. It's not a fatalistic thing, And there's some evilness and darkness in there, but, you got to look at on the other side, too, have to think about what's making them so afraid. You know, they wouldn't be so afraid if there wasn't, you know, a kink in the arm, you know. So I think we just keep pushing and keeping the faith, you know, and, you know, bumping heads together and exchanging knowledge. You know, we're getting there. So, yeah, so give up to you and the community and exchange knowledge, and I think we're going to get there myself, you know. We keep, you know, turning over operations and installing them up, and I think it's a good thing, you know. If we block them on stuff between now and the election, you know, and we keep the Black Lives Matter, you know, race riot from starting, and we can stop the, you know, the DNA encoding mapping that Obama wants to do through legislation after New Year's. I mean, that's 2 of 3, and then all they got is the summer and the push for war, you know. And if we stop that, they got nothing left. You know, if the U.S. people are not down for a war with Iran and Syria, you know, they lost. They lost Turkey. They lost the pipeline. They lose entry into Egypt. We have Iraq now asking, you know, Russia to come in, kick the shit out of CIA agents. You know what I mean?
It's irony,
you know,
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much lost, and they know it. If they can't take Iran and Syria now, because China and Russia are not bluffing, they know the gig's up. You know, and they're slaughtering CIA, Al Qaeda dudes left and right. But I mean, by the hundreds daily. I mean, by June, I don't even know if CIA were having left. Russia's mopping them up with some really nasty, evil stuff. You know what I mean? Dropping like thermobaric bombs. You know, I mean, Russia's dropping thermobaric bombs, you know, on caves. I mean, thermobaric bombs, and they'll expand, you know, 2 miles out and suck in everything, including, I mean, it's so hot, it burns the air. You can't even, like, breathe. You know what I mean? It will literally burn the air in your lungs. They're dropping bombs like that, you know, every 10 minutes on these news since going back 6 weeks. So we're desperate. We got nothing left except for the war, you know, and Obama's computer push. It's because of people like you. You know, and people like you know, and people like, you know, and people like Lou who keep putting the information out. You know, you guys are awesome with this stuff. You know, and every day, you know, we keep growing in numbers and growing in strength. You know, strength of heart's where it's at. You know, and knowledge is key. You know,
We'll be catching up again. And hey, thanks everybody again for listening. And we had a lot of people saying thanks to you, and they enjoyed the broadcast. I really appreciate that. Stick around for the Wackadoodle Wednesday back at 7 Central. I'm going to join Grammy Mary in her rocket chair. So we're going to blast off tonight, baby. Thanks, bud. Thank you, sir. You guys are awesome. My co-captain and producer over there, way across the waves. I'm waving. Hi. If you could see me now, you'd just see me waving. So,
yeah, the NSA is thanking you for that one.
Yeah. Say goodnight, Gracie.
I don't feel like it.
Where is she?
I don't know.
Gracie, come say goodnight.
I thought you had her. You had her last. Anyway, so you're going to be a big radio slut. You're going to do a double.
Yeah.
Well,
and I don't have any clothes on right now, by the way. We all agreed to do this naked.
Yeah. But will you do me a favor and say hi to Grammy for me when you do?
Thanks, Maddie. Thanks, Grammy. And, hey, thank you all. And, wait a minute. 2 plates? How many is that? Hey, there's 2 of me right here right now. You'll find mini-me everywhere. Just look. And we can call that a wrap. You can cut this anytime. And I've got to go do show null and end this. In this, I tell you, I'll end it all. No, I'm going to reset RLM to...